Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much, and I'm so delighted you've joined me for part 2 of our story. So before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up, and let's continue with part 2 of our story. The truth was, the breakup of my relationship with Colton was so incredibly shattering, I couldn't get back on the horse again. So many of my friends at work tried to set me up on a blind date, but I just couldn't do it. I guess the saying, once bitten, twice shy, really did apply to me. You can't be a hermit all your life, my best friend Ellie had said to me, after a year had gone by, and I still had not gone out on the town with her or any of my girlfriends. What's wrong with you, Trixie? Colton was a complete loser. He was crazy to dump you. But it's his loss, your gain as far as I'm concerned. Someone better will come along to sweep you off your feet. But just move on. I promise you that not all men are going to treat you like he did. It was via the grapevine I had learnt that Colton had been seeing someone else, and this young lady was heavily pregnant with his baby. I could hardly believe it. Later I learnt his relationship with this mystery woman had ended very swiftly. I knew he wouldn't get in touch with me again, or come crawling back into my life, as he emphatically believed he wasn't my type, based on what I had told him, so he wouldn't humiliate himself any further by contacting me. Maybe I haven't been out very much, I admitted to Ellie. I just need some more time to myself. The trouble was I kept saying this repetitively, over and over again, until 5 years had slipped by, and I had not been on a single date since I'd broken up with Colton, although my friends had tried to set me up with someone on multiple occasions. But I was rather like a tortoise retreating back into my shell, as the dating scene absolutely did not appeal to me at all, and in truth it scared the bejesus out of me. "You're becoming exactly like a hermit," Ellie said to me. "I'm sorry, but Trixie, you are. You hide away in your apartment on a Friday night. It's insane. You should be out there having a great time, meeting interesting people. Please don't be such a wet blanket. At least come out on the town for a nightcap with the girls. You don't have to talk to any members of the opposite sex if you don't want to, but for goodness sake, stop locking yourself away in your ivory castle like Rapunzel. At this rate, you'll never meet your Prince Charming. Besides, you don't have Rapunzel's long golden hair, so any potential suitors won't be able to climb up 8 floors to your apartment, as your short locks aren't going to be much use, are they?" she teased. It was ironic that even my landlord, Mr. Ferris, whom I rent out my apartment from in Portland, had the audacity to remark on my single status, as if it was something that had not gone by unnoticed. So many of my friends were now getting married. If I wasn't careful, I'd be the last one left on the shelf. I'd always liked Mr. Ferris very much. He was a gentleman in his 50s who claimed to have a niece my age. "What's a nice girl like yourself doing single?" he asked me one day. "I'd have thought a young man would have snatched you up a long time ago, Trixie. Or are there no sensible young men out there who know a good thing when they see it? In my day, a girl as lovely as yourself would not have remained single for very long. What is the world coming to?" "It's nice of you to say that, Mr. Ferris, but my last boyfriend, Colton, dumped me, and I never ever got over it. So I'm squeamish about dating now." Mr. Ferris waved an arm in front of his head. "That boyfriend of yours was a fool letting the likes of you go. An absolute fool." Then there was my mother, of course, who constantly was on and on at me on the telephone, having a good old gripe about how I'm her only daughter and how she's waiting for me to get married and start having babies so she can spoil an entire brood of grandchildren absolutely rotten. If my mother had her way, I wouldn't stop at just 2 children. I would have had 4 or 5 of them. The more the merrier. "How old are you, sweetheart?" she asked me one day very tactlessly, moving in for the kill, like a shark fin in the water, spotting a surfer on his board, and determined to cause as much havoc as possible. "You should know my age, Mum, by now. Why would you ask me a question like that anyway? You gave birth to me, didn't you? I think you should know my age. You can do the math, can't you? I'm not that old." "I'm very aware of your age, Trixie, and that is the point here. Do I need to remind you that you're on the threshold of turning 30? You are unmarried, haven't dated for the last 5 years, and are beginning to become a recluse in your own apartment. It's desperately sad seeing a young lady like yourself with so much potential and so much to give, wasting away in your apartment like that. This is no way to live, love." "And what's that supposed to mean, Mum?" "The clock is ticking, love. You're not getting any younger, are you? I hate to be so blatantly blunt, but it needs to be said. Over the last 5 years or so, you've been on a dating sabbatical. If you carry on this way, you'll be wearing orange and living in a monastery and hanging out with the Dalai Lama for company. Your poor father. Well, he's beginning to believe that we'll never become grandparents, and it's very distressing for him, I'm most sure." "Mum, Dad never said any of that, and you know it. He wouldn't say something like that. The truth is you're expressing what you are feeling about not having any grandchildren and my single status. But don't you dare bring Dad into the equation to try and manipulate me by using him as a pawn in your little manipulative game. I know what you're doing." "Well, sweetheart, if you must know, I do feel shortchanged. I'm not going to deny that for a second. All my friends at book club have daughters that are married, that are about your age, you know. Some of them have children already. And these friends of mine have grandbabies. When I go to the book club, that's all they ever talk about. I feel terribly left out. I mean, can you blame me for that?" "So let's see, Mum. What you're really saying is you're sad because you cannot boast about your grandchildren at book club because you don't have any." "Well, it would be nice to have grandchildren. I was looking very forward to becoming a grandmother. But this isn't all about me, love. You should be married by now, with a bun in the oven. When I was 23 years old, I was a married woman already. And at 24, I was expecting you. But with the way you're carrying on, I'll never be a grandmother at this rate." "Mum, for your information, I'm not a baby-making machine. Besides, I haven't met anyone I like to enjoy a serious relationship with. And I'm not going to get involved with someone unless I can actually see a potential future with them. I don't see the point on going on a date just for the hell of it. I'm not that type of girl." "Well, you're not going to meet anyone, are you, love, with such a stinky, pessimistic attitude? And being stuck in your apartment all the time and only leaving to go to work every day and buy your groceries. Well, you are becoming a recluse, love. And acting like an old woman many generations older than you actually are. It's a travesty as far as I'm concerned. You're young, love. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You need to live it. Don't go throwing it away by retracting from the world. As I keep saying, love, you've got so much to give. Have you been talking to Ellie or something? Is that what this is about? Ellie keeps going on and on at me about going out, and now you are as well." "Well, Ellie's a very lovely girl. She's got your interests at heart, love. She's been telling me how antisocial you've become. I know you were hurt in your last relationship with Colton, but not all men are like him. I can testify to this myself. I mean, look at your dear old father. Believe it or not, he may look like a sack of potatoes now, but he was quite the super stud in his day. I can promise you that. Every young lady my age was green at the gills that he chose me over them. Let's just say, a more loyal man you cannot find. But there are some very good men out there, Trixie. But you're not going to succeed in meeting anyone, cutting yourself off like this away from the world. Yes, we did think that Colton was the one for you. He was a lovely gentleman. We thought he'd take good care of you. But we got him completely wrong, didn't we? Your father couldn't wait for him to pop the question to you. We were waiting on tenterhooks at the time for that to happen. We thought you were both made for each other, but it wasn't to be. I hate to say this, but you have allowed your raw festering emotions over your breakup with Colton that, need I remind you, happened over 5 years ago, to sabotage any chance of meeting anyone else. And that is ridiculous, love. You know it, and I know it. I'm quite sure you'll meet someone who will treat you right. In fact, I know you will. You need to have a little faith, that's all. My whole church has been praying for you, love. Mum, what the hell did you just say? I asked, feeling completely mortified. People in church prayed for the sick, the elderly, the infirm, not over someone like me, who was failing to go out into the big wide world to date, or was having trouble finding a boyfriend. Please repeat yourself, Mum, I said, thinking I must have heard wrong. I was hoping to God I had done so, for the alternative I couldn't bear to think about. I imagined every churchgoer whispering among themselves about me down the aisles, and many of them knew me growing up, as I'd attended church every Sunday with my parents. My mother was a devout Christian. Her motto in life was to turn everything over to God if the problem needed fixing, for God would always make a way where there is no way. I could only imagine what the people in the congregation were saying at church after my mother unabashedly began to air all my dirty laundry for everyone to see. Every splatter, every dirty mark, absolutely everything. Did you know Beryl Lancaster's daughter Trixie has become a hermit? The poor little mite hasn't had a boyfriend for over 5 years. Oh dear. She was overwrought, you know, when her ex dumped her, and she's never been able to pick up the pieces of her life again. What a dreadful shame. Poor thing. We really must pray for her. She's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder over her last relationship. She's lost all faith in men. She really needs our prayers. So while we pray for the impoverished and the infirm and the sick, we desperately need to pray for little Trixie. Oh, wasn't I speaking clearly, love? Said my mother nonchalantly. I do apologize. Your father tells me I'm always mumbling these days. I was saying my whole church has been praying for you, love. Everybody cares about you very much. They want you to be happy, to find a man worthy of your love. What the hell? I gasped. You got the church to pray for me? Because I haven't been out in a while. Is this a joke, Mum? Of course it's not a joke, love. I wouldn't joke about something as significant as this. It would be in poor taste, wouldn't it? And besides, I wouldn't hear the end of it from your father. Everyone knows that God's will for a man and woman is to come together in marriage, and you deserve that, Trixie. I don't like to think of you stuck in your apartment all day on your own, like a recluse. Your attraction from the world is a very real problem, love. It needs to be discouraged. There are other people like you that also hide away from the world due to social phobias and stuff like that. These are problems that need to be addressed and dealt with. And as I was saying to Pastor Lewis, you've never been the same since Colton dumped you. Mum, you have just humiliated me. Do you realise that? Humiliated me in front of hundreds of people at church. Are you kidding me? I can't believe you had the balls and the nerve to actually do this. For your information, I do not spend all day in my apartment feeling sorry for myself as you claim. You're painting me in a very bleak light. I have a job. I go every day to work. I mingle with people in the workplace. Then I come home and spend time in my apartment. I'm tired after a long day spent at work. You're portraying me like this to the entire church, and it's not fair. It's downright insulting and very embarrassing. You're making me into a laughing stock, the butt of everybody's jokes. Are you telling me you told the entire church I was a recluse and to pray for me to get out of the house? I hope to God you did not. I'll never be able to show my face in that church ever again at this rate. Look, sweetheart, it's nothing to be ashamed of. You have a problem, that's all. I told Pastor Lewis about your problem, and he was very happy to pray for you. And other young people like yourself as well, who've lost the courage to date and who really need to find that special someone in their lives. You're not alone, love. It's not something to be ashamed of. There are many people like you, but the good Lord is the best matchmaker of them all. He will bring the perfect person into your life. Just you wait and see. My prayers are always answered. My God, Mum! I can't believe what you're actually telling me. Do you realise how pathetically small I'm feeling right now? I feel like I want to crawl under a leaf and hide. Oh my God, I can't believe you have the brazen audacity to do what you did and get an entire church to pray for me. This is so humiliating. Look, you're overreacting, love. Your father thought it was wrong of me to tell the church about your problem. But you know what they say. You need to go boldly to the throne of grace, and the Lord will hear you. I want things to work out for you, love. I'm not going to allow pride to get in the way. Sometimes, Trixie, you are far too proud for your own good, if you don't mind my saying so. And that doesn't get you anywhere. If you want my wizened opinion, which I am quite sure you do not, as you probably think your mother is an old fool, I think you should go out with your best friend Ellie, who has your interests at heart, love, along with some of your lovely girlfriends, and meet some interesting people out on the town. Now that isn't going to happen for you if you shut yourself away in your ivory tower like you do. It's not healthy, love. Me and your father are very worried about you for good reason. Pastor Lewis could see we were grievously concerned about your current condition. Mum! I snorted defensively. For goodness sake, leave me alone, will you? I don't appreciate you meddling around in my life like this and telling an entire church that I'm a hermit. You're talking about me as if I've contracted a deadly disease or something. I'll have you know I'm doing just fine on my own. You're worrying yourselves about nothing. And besides, I don't think Dad's worried at all. This is all about you, Mum, and you know it. But are you doing fine, love? My mother said gingerly. I don't think so. If I weren't so worried about you, I wouldn't have spoken about you to Pastor Lewis. He agreed with me that hiding away in your apartment is no way to live. I hasten to say my mother's words had stung really hard, probably because I knew to a certain extent they were true, and none of us like to have an inconvenient truth being spelled out to us, for it makes us uncomfortable, like someone telling us we're drinking far too much alcohol, or are on the precipice of becoming an alcoholic, or we're overdoing it with the painkillers and coming close to being an addict. In my case, the threat of becoming an old hermit was very definitely on the horizon of my life, although I was loath to admit it. I felt mad at my mother for telling the church all about my embarrassing antisocial problem and my inability to go out on the town at night. There were surely bigger fish to fry when it came to prayer requests, but my mother was always incorrigible like that. She would pray over anything that concerned her. I remember she prayed once for our bulldog Poppy to get pregnant with a neighbour's very handsome brown and white bulldog called Bertie. The neighbour was a snooty man called Mr. Greenday, and he didn't want this to happen, even though he refused to get his dog neutered. One day Bertie escaped through a hole he dug under the fence, as he was in desperate hot pursuit of little Poppy, who was in season. My mother's prayers were finally answered. Poppy became heavily pregnant, and my mother ended up giving our neighbour one of her puppies. Poppy must have had over 11 puppies. The formidable Mr. Greenday was pleased as punch. So yes, my mother's prayers were always answered, and with a twinkle in her eye she winked at me and said, "God's got a great sense of humour, you know, Trixie." He answered my prayer. Mr. Greenday was practically eating out of my hands. He's besotted over the puppy. He's chosen to call it Twinkie.
It must have been my mother digging the knife in really hard, with her cursory blunt words, that dealt out a hefty punch, especially when she announced that the whole church knew the details of my unfortunate plight, and about how my biological clock was ticking away so fast that if I didn't do something really quick, by the time I looked in the mirror again, I'd be unmarried, 50, and long past my childbearing years. It was these thoughts that propelled me to agree to going out with Ellie and my 3 girlfriends one Friday night, and that was when I first met Warren.
"Why this change of heart?" asked Ellie. "I've been trying to get you to come out on the town for ages and ages, and you point-blank refused with a myriad of excuses. You're actually telling me that at long last the bear is coming out of hibernation? I can hardly believe it. What's brought this on?" "Don't be like that, Ellie," I retorted. "If you must know, it's about my mother. She keeps reminding me I'm not getting any younger, that my biological clock is ticking. She's been pestering me that I should go out with you on an evening. So I need to shut her up. The truth is, it's the last thing I actually want to do. But I guess she's right. If I don't push myself, it's never going to happen, is it?" "That's the spirit. I'm so glad you're coming out tonight," said Ellie, throwing her arms around me. "Finally, your mother's actually spoken some sense to you. We're going to have a great time tonight, and if you see a young man you like who approaches you for a friendly chat, please don't push him away. You don't have to marry him, you know. You're coming out for a good time, that's all. But try not to take yourself too seriously for once in your life. Let your hair down and enjoy yourself." The bar in town was a hive of buzzing activity. Not much had changed in that regard. The cheerful chorus of people's chatter and laughter almost drowned out people's voices. Slowly but surely, as the drinks arrived at our table, after a couple of glasses of wine and some pleasant chatter with my girlfriends, I began to unwind, and my nervous apprehension was thrown to the wayside, like a discarded cigarette. And yes, against all the odds, I was actually beginning to enjoy myself, which was rather surprising. "See, it's not so bad coming out on the town with us," said Ellie, giving me an encouraging nudge. "I knew you would enjoy yourself." I had deliberately made very little effort with my appearance that evening, because I had gone out on the town rather begrudgingly, unlike my friends who were dressed to the nines. I was just simply wearing a pair of jeans and a sweatshirt. I guess I didn't want to dress up to draw any attention to myself. When it was my turn to order a round of drinks, I staggered rather awkwardly to my feet, as the 2 glasses of wine I had already drunk had gone straight to my head. It was when I made my way to the bar that I saw Warren for the first time. He was ordering a drink for himself and a friend of his. I was standing behind him, but someone behind me pushed into me so impatiently, as such was their eagerness to be served and to get to the front of the queue, as the queue of eager customers was growing quite big. I went barreling into Warren and landed precariously at his feet. Warren turned around and looked down at me. He offered me a hand to raise me back to my feet, which I accepted. "Are you all right?" he asked, looking concerned for me. "I'm fine," I said, letting out a whole lot of hiccups, which made me giggle like mad. Warren smiled warmly at me. "Would you like a drink?" he asked me. I immediately forgot that I was in line to buy a round of drinks myself for my friends. I was now pretty bladdered. "If you're buying, how can I refuse you?" Warren led me to a table in the bar, where he introduced me to his friend, who was sitting there waiting patiently for his drink to arrive. A while later, Ellie and my 3 other girlfriends joined the table, and we ended up having a great evening together. I don't particularly remember much about that evening, because I was rather tipsy. It was at the end of the evening that Warren very shyly slipped a note into my hand and smiled at me. The following morning I read the note. It said, "It was lovely meeting you tonight, Trixie. I would like to take you out to dinner sometime. Please give me a call, Warren." I had decided to give Warren a call, and before long we became an item. I guess I had allowed this relationship to progress, as my sense of foreboding over my single status meant that I jumped into the relationship without much due thought about what I was actually doing. I guess I knew in my heart of hearts that Warren could never hurt me. I wasn't really that into him,
so it was cruel to be stringing him along like this. I was now sitting in the passenger seat next to Warren, who was driving to the Oregon coast so that I could meet his parents. I was beginning to wonder what I was doing here in the car with him. I really should end things with him, I kept telling myself. If I'm being perfectly honest with myself, which is something I was loath to do, I would say that I wholeheartedly could not envisage spending the rest of my life with Warren. It would never happen. We were poles apart, even from the way we thought about things. Besides, there was not a scientific bone in my entire body. There really was no future in our relationship, and I knew it. Why am I putting myself through all these hoops, I thought, like a dog at a dog show that stands no chance in winning, but still attempts to give it a go anyway. Even Ellie was telling me I'd lost my marbles going out with Warren. I guess she was right. "He's not your type, Trixie," she told me. "I'm sure he's a very nice guy. He seems very sweet, and I liked him when I met him at the bar." "I could tell he was smitten by you, Trixie. I genuinely liked him, but he's not right for you. Anyone can see that from a mile away. But I can tell you're not that into him either. He's very keen on you, but the feeling is clearly not reciprocated. Do you really want to go hurting him like Colton hurt you? Isn't that cruel? I know I've been encouraging you to get out of your comfort zone and to meet new people, but I wasn't telling you to go out with someone who's a science geek and who's absolutely not your type. I mean, what do you actually have in common with him? Absolutely nothing. When you were at school with me, I might remind you, without wishing to be unkind, that you were at the bottom of the class in science and math. Your talents were in the more creative outlets." "Well, I kind of like him," I said. "He's different from the other guys I've dated. What's wrong with being opposite to him? Don't they say opposites attract? Besides, it's refreshing to go out with someone different." "Refreshing, Trixie? Is that what you call it? I think I know what you're doing. Don't forget I'm your best friend, and I can read you like a book. You're dating Warren because deep down you know you could never love him, so he can't hurt you. You're protecting yourself from being hurt. And what better way to do that than to go out with someone who has no hold over your emotions?" As I sit there in Warren's car, I listen to the wheel of his car as it swishes across rain-spattered roads in Portland that shine under the deluge of rain that shoots down from the sky. I find myself reflecting over Ellie's words. Was she right? Of course she was. It all made so much sense. I was dating Warren as I felt safe knowing that he could never hurt me. I could never love him. Was I really that insecure? It was clear to me that I was. As I glanced outside the window, watching the raindrops rolling down my passenger side window, I was seriously tempted to tell Warren to abandon this road trip and to drop me back home. I think meeting his parents was a step too far. It really wasn't a good idea. I cannot bring myself to telling Warren that it won't work out between us. I can't hurt this young man. He's been so incredibly good to me, so kind and so generous. I just can't do it. The words I desperately need to say are on the edge of my tongue, and are stuck in the back of my throat like a golfing ball that refuses to move. The thought of ending things with Warren here and now seems like the right thing to do. It would be the kindest thing to do, even though I'm going to hurt him badly. But hurting him now will be a whole lot easier than leaving it for longer, when it's going to hurt him a whole lot more. It's not right to lead him on in a relationship that is going nowhere down the fast lane of only what I imagine will be regret and bitter disappointment. I know deep down in my gut, with a clear, unfoggy conviction, that I could never love Warren. He's absolutely not my type. Never could be in a zillion years. He's far too geeky for me, and also very clever. Too clever for the likes of me. When I think back on my ex-boyfriend Colton, he really was my type in every sense of the word. Warren is the antithesis of him in every regard. And yet I sense, unlike Colton, Warren would never hurt me. Hence my reluctance to end things with him. Yes, he's cute enough, but he could never measure up to Colton. But then again, I haven't met anyone who actually could, which is the quintessential reason I abandoned dating other men a long time ago. Both Carlton and Warren were blessed with having those quintessential baby faces that I typically like in a man. In a strange idiosyncratic way that I can't explain, there is a remarkable similarity in the appearances of both Carlton and Warren, almost as if they are related. Chance would be a fine thing. I can't work out whether it's the eyes and nose or the dimples in the cheeks that are so similar. What are the chances that I would see something of my ex in Warren? But I do. Maybe that's why I chose to date him in the first place. Why does everything have to be so damn complicated, I wonder? I keep clandestinely ruminating very silently over my lack of compatibility with Warren. I'm glad he can't see what I'm thinking. Indeed, these thoughts seem to be restlessly plaguing my mind, rather like an ocean crashing towards the shoreline as the waves become progressively more fearsome. Yet despite everything, I still cannot bring myself to say the words that would ultimately end things between me and Warren, and put a full stop at the end of the sentence for good, with an abrupt but cruel finality. The ending of anything can be tough, we all know that. I think about what Colton's words had done to me all those years ago, when he cruelly told me that things were not working out between us. I felt like a fish that had been speared. I feel as if I would be doing the exact same thing to Warren if I started to express my extreme misgivings about our relationship now. There's a time and place for everything, and telling Warren how I feel would be wretchedly unkind. Look how happy he looks right now. He's so eager for me to meet his parents. I can put breaking up with him off for the time being. Yes, that's what I need to do. Warren is a nice guy, of course he is. Indeed, I very much doubt there's a single bad bone in his entire body. I don't want to treat him with the contemptuous disregard that Colton viciously displayed towards me, because that would make me as cruel as Colton was. But at the same time, do I really want to date someone whom I see no future with? It seems like a pointless exercise. As if sensing my extreme discomfort, Warren turns around to me and flashes me a warm, encouraging smile. He's got very nice teeth. They are very white, perfectly straight, and all his own. He also smells incredibly nice. He wears one of my favourite men's aftershaves. I think it's called Fahrenheit by Christian Dior. I'm reminded of what a nice guy he is. He's gentle, kind, and very sweet and considerate. I can't hurt him, and I can see he really likes me, which makes this all the more impossible to navigate. I feel as if I've got myself parked in a narrow parking spot, and I don't know how to back out of this tight squeeze without causing some kind of upheaval in the process. Suffice to say, I know very well what the feeling of rejection has done to my own life, and it hasn't been good. How can I inflict this on somebody else? I blame my mother for this, with her rambling on and on about how I needed to get out there and paint the town red. She pushed me into going out with Ellie and my friends that evening. If I'd stayed at home in my apartment, I'd never have met Warren in the first place. I wouldn't be sitting in his car right now, pontificating on how I can get out of this relationship without breaking his heart. It's a little like walking over a bed of hot coals and trying desperately not to get my feet burnt. I'm mad at my mum, telling the entire church about my dilemma. When I went to visit my parents last weekend, I bumped into my mother's next-door neighbour. That woman doesn't know how to keep her mouth shut at the very best of times. She also informed me the church had been praying for me. I was wretchedly humiliated. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Mrs. Ella Hewitt gave me one of those pitiful smiles and said, "How are you, dear?" "I'm fine," I said curtly. "You don't have to be so brave, dear. I know from your lovely mother that you've been through quite a whirlwind these last 5 years or so. But things will get better, you know. We've all been praying for you very hard at the church. Your mum was telling us about you, your condition." "I don't have a condition, Mrs. Hewitt," I had said. "There's nothing wrong with me. Do I look ill?" "Now, there's no need to feel ashamed, love. There are lots of people that lock themselves away in their apartments and are desperately afraid to go out. There's a medical name for the condition, I believe. I'm sure the good Lord will heal you." "Do I look like I'm afraid to go out, Mrs. Hewitt? I'm visiting my mum, aren't I? That means I'm out. For your information, I go to work every day of the week. I would hardly describe myself as being trapped in my apartment. I'm not scared to go out. I just don't want to always do it, that's all.
Look, love, don't get so defensive with me. I'm on your side, you know. I just want you to know that everybody is praying for you. And Pastor Lewis was also praying for you, that you would meet that special someone, she said, giving me a wink. You youngsters these days have such a dreadfully hard time meeting other young people. Anyone would think it would be easier, you know, with social media and online dating platforms. But I'm learning that that is not the case. Mrs. Ella Hewitt reached out to give me a nudge. Never mind, dear. I'm sure you will meet someone very nice shortly. When I think about my mother's interference in my life, it makes my blood absolutely boil. My poor father was so embarrassed when the church prayed for me. He knew there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. The church should be praying for people that are seriously ill. But my mother knows how to make a song and dance about the smallest things, and furthermore she has no qualms in doing so. And as well as letting everybody know all the details of my non-existent love life. Just thinking about my mother now makes me want to squirm. So there we are. That is the end of part 2 of our story tonight. Oh, what a web we weave. A fabulous story it is too. I look forward to you joining me tomorrow night. Until next time, goodbye and good night.